Let's debunk some myths about demisexuality, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, feel free to send them this video. Myth number 2, demisexuality aligns with the norms of dating and always has, and you don't belong in the LGBTQIA+ community. I'd like to inform you that the A in LGBTQIA+ stands for asexual, not ally. And demisexuality falls within the asexual spectrum. So yes, we actually do belong in the community. Also, social norms and interpersonal relationships and how people in society interact with one another has changed so much over the past several decades, let alone centuries. We've already talked about what it's like for demisexual folks in today's day and age to be dating, but let's talk about what it would have been like a few decades ago. If you're Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z, then you know that our grandparents had very different norms around dating than we do. They had a lot of social, race-related, and caste-related customs. But as it pertains to sexuality, there was always this component of commitment almost always entailed marriage. It was almost as if the ability to have sex freely was seen as a reward for making a commitment, a lifelong commitment to a specific person. And before their time, especially in the colonial era, this was even known as the marriage mart. Gender roles were pre-established. The socially acceptable established goal was always marriage and kids, and premarital sex, and sometimes any kind of premarital affection, was a deep no-no. Leaving aside the fact that this would be restrictive even for the allosexuals of today, dating for demisexuals in this era would have probably felt very confusing and restrictive. While the idea of little to no physical intimacy during the dating stage seems kind of ideal for a demisexual, the idea of dating with marriage in mind would leave us on a ticking time bomb to either surrender to a marriage that we did not want, because courting someone for that long while you waited for your emotional feelings to show up would be considered inappropriate, shameful. You could break things off and become a social pariah, or you could force yourself to develop sexual feelings that are not going to show up that way, ever. Not to mention that between the restrictive gender roles and the coercive control that heterosexual men in any era like to exert over specifically AFAB people, let alone AFAB demisexual people, this is a dangerous situation. Where for allosexual people, sex without emotional connection would be absolutely possible. Because it's not possible for demisexual people, we would be considered bad spouses, bad partners, because we wouldn't be able to engage in marital activities the way allosexual folks would. Not to mention the fact that demisexual folks could be other kinds of queer as well. They could be pan, they could be bi, they could be trans, they could be lesbian, and they could be possibly, that means, discriminated against on more levels than one in a traditional dating setting. Follow and turn your notifications on for part 3.